You might remember me talking about a series called Dark Blood. Created by my good friend Jamal Malik Clymer, the series has now reached its third volume, is being translated into 9 different languages, is available digitally, has a line of merchandise, and has even released a colour edition. To celebrate this growth, I've decided to promote it once more in today's video. Dark Blood closely resembles a long-running series like those in Weekly Shonen Jump, with a focus on an expanding world teeming with characters and fights. The art style is incredibly unique and vibrant, and you'll find that it quickly becomes an addictive read. Following the story of a boy called Knight, things quickly spiral out of control when he meets a Blood Aim, which grants him powerful abilities and attracts some unwanted attention. It's nice to promote actual people like Jamal instead of something like Raid or Honey. This is just a cool guy doing what he loves. So follow the link in the description and pinned comment to buy the first 3 volumes and more today. Today we're talking about Berserk's structure. It's a little different from the norm, but at the same time it isn't. Let me show you. Many series follow an Aristotelian method of storytelling, the 3-act structure, the idea of a beginning, a middle, and an end. Other people would later come to create their own version of this structure, from Henrik Ibsen's 4-act structure to Gustav Freytag's 5-act structure, also known as Freytag's Pyramid. These are all structures of storytelling that are told in schools today because our media largely continues to follow them. It can be fun to attach some of these methodologies to different films or series, though sometimes it isn't always an easy thing to do. Long-running series that span decades and follow one continuous story present a real challenge. One Piece, for example, follows numerous smaller structures for each of its arcs, even changing this when appropriate. For example, with Wano Kuni, it's an arc which features heavy allusions to Japanese culture, and so it takes on the classical Japanese kabuki structure, which is a play composed of 5 acts. But once Wano comes to an end, so too will this structure as another one begins. To go back to the topic of our video, let's now take a look at the complex and surprisingly original structure of Berserk. The first 2 arcs of Berserk were the Black Swordsman and Golden Age arcs, 2 stories which told the mystery behind a man who was haunted by his past and the origins or backstory to explain how he got there. The strength of comparing these two come from the contrast of a man suffering from loss and a boy finding something fulfilling in life. Starting with a low point as despairing as the Black Swordsman arc, makes Guts holding his sword and dreaming of sparks seem like an enlightening counterpoint. The bittersweet belonging that Guts finds in the sparks of swordplay come as an emotionally mixed scene to us because we know from the previous arc that Guts' fate is forever bound in endless fighting. In the Golden Age, we go from one low point to the other before Guts begins a rogue life, whereupon we are slowly drip-fed glimmers of hope for Guts through belonging, ambition, and eventually even love. These are all set up to outwin each other in terms of satisfaction when read or watched, and similarly to how they were set up, the story then quickly dismantles any semblance of certainty in this man's life in one fell swoop to leave us where we were to begin with in the most emotionally upsetting way possible. This story, this 13-volume saga of Guts, is almost like a complete story. We have our beginning of Guts aimlessly assassinating apostles with a vendetta against Femto. We have a bold middle where the characters are fleshed out through origin stories and with a semi-functional life. And then we have our conclusive end, where the actions of all of the characters proceed in an absolute bloodbath where everything is tied together. Let's go through events as though this was a complete story. The Black Swordsman is our exposition. Guts' time in the Band of the Hawk and everything leading to Griffith's turmoil is the rising action. The sequence of breaking Griffith out of the dungeon, Hawks vs Bakiraka, Wild vs Hawks, and Apostles vs Hawks, this is all the climax, where all of the actions taken against each other take place. The next step, the falling action, takes place from the heartrending final sequence between our main 3 trio to their rescue and their mental anguish at these events. The denouement and the resolution is Guts' first moments as the Black Swordsman, vowing to become nothing aside from an assassin against the Apostles. That's looking at things without addressing the real complete story, because obviously Berserk doesn't just begin and end there. This entire application only works if we see the first 13 volumes as a complete story, which it isn't. In fact, the first 13 volumes kind of leaves off as a first act out of 3 in a much, much bigger story that spans around 50 or so volumes. With that being said, we can now see these first 2 arcs as a solid first act that teaches us, more than anything, who Guts is as a person. We're introduced to Guts at his worst so that we understand the reputation of the Black Swordsman without knowing anything else about him, just like the rest of the characters in the series. When we learn his complex and haunting past, it opens the window not only for us to understand how he got here and empathize with him, but it opens the door for this almost comically bleak character to get some further development as we move on from Act 1 into Act 2. As Act 1 ventured into Guts' trauma and brutal identity as the Black Swordsman, Act 2 of the story can almost be seen as the path that Guts takes in order to get back towards normalcy. Where Act 1 follows a Guts that abandons Casca to pursue revenge, we now start Act 2 with a Guts that wants to abandon his revenge to pursue and reclaim Casca. A complete flip. It makes sense then that Guts starts accepting others' help again, because his drive and ambition are entirely rejuvenated. Guts' main ambition in Act 1 was to escape the idea of friendships, relationships, and bonding of any kind, in an effort to dodge the mental repercussions of losing the Band of the Hawk. Guts' main ambition in Act 2 is now to address this mentality within him, to realize the importance of making these bonds, and, well, to make them again. The introduction of causality and the cyclical nature of some events are fascinating to observe through the acts. In Act 1, we begin with Guts' parents, a battle-hardened and uncaring father alongside a mentally indisposed mother. This is something which the byproduct of causality would echo once again through Guts' time as the Black Swordsman. Leaving his partner and casting aside his offspring with nothing but fighting on his mind. Then Casca's mental oppression with her fondness for her phantom child that brings demons with it wherever it goes. These are echoes of Shisu's fondness for Guts, and of Gambino's behaviour. Where Gambino's crew labelled Guts a curse, the Phantom Child is cursed. Where Shisu seemed to lack some mental faculties, Casca is almost mentally incapacitated. And this all ties into Guts' characterization as he lives in spite of his now literal curse. What began as something as small as an offhand judgment has spiraled into an overarching story through the 3 acts. It's something which is apparent through some of the symbols in the world of the series too, with the Hawk of Light being perched upon this spiral motif that is corroborated through many other types of symbols, old and new. Another cyclical story element is that of Guts and Casca's relationship. In the Golden Age, when they both find common ground within each other, they make love in a forest, alone to themselves, and, if just for a moment, unfazed by anything going on around them. When Casca returns, we have an unfortunately dismal recreation of this. They are in a forest, their chemistry even seems to have remained intact by their first conversation together, they have common ground, but it turns out that the stress Casca underwent was too strong for her to overcome entirely, rendering the setting a literal paradise, ineffective at easing Casca into a healthy relationship with her former lover again. It's really upsetting to analyse when looking at the cyclical nature of Berserk, because if we look back at previous events, Guts was the one who initially struggled to overcome his prior trauma. In fact, we see much the same thing twice here, with Guts about to reach out and share compassionate intimacy with Casca, but finding himself unable to, with Gambino, coincidentally the previous cyclical link, being the one to cut this short. Years later, in the same setting with a similar approach towards some form of intimacy, we see the same clash of emotions within the opposite character, compounding the cyclical tragedy of causality in the acts of Berserk. As a footnote, Griffith finds his own kingdom and begins saving people, even giving unforgivable monsters a place in society. Guts and Griffith stand opposed to each other, but have already reached an equilibrium that would have been suitable as an ending to the first story, but alas, the first story concluded with becoming the monster, and this one is the path to salvation. It's also about the fact that neither of these people are going to be able to reach salvation as long as the other exists. The cyclical nature is there to prove that we need to progress forwards to something else and escape this cyclical nature before we can bring this story to a close. And what a perfect window that is to take us towards a third and final act. Guts and Casca are the only people able to bring Griffith down. Guts has saved Casca, but is intertwined in politics where the rule of Griffith extends and threatens the existence of everyone who got him this far. As someone who has grown, Guts now has responsibility again, as apprehensive as it may make him. Revenge was something present from the very first page of the very first chapter. It's something within Guts that has evolved and changed into more of an idea of redemption over time, but has still remained as an inevitable end for his story. Despite finding salvation and becoming entwined with a group that he could belong in again, Guts is aware of this inevitability and has almost prepared for it all along. It's clear that Guts tried his best to avoid facing it, but causality is placing it back into his lap once more. Be it smearing Griffith's name, making people realise the truth behind the prophecy of the White Hawk, or somehow genuinely winning in a fight against him, Guts is going to have to risk losing it all again to stand any kind of a chance against him. With Miura's keenness to not write an utterly bleak ending again, it'll be interesting to see how Griffith can fall, and what it'll cost to get us there. Looking at it all, we have a 3-act structure, with a cyclical theme being transparent among them all. I expect in the future for Skull Knight to tell his tale, which will bear many cyclical themes to it, enough for the group to notice and heed it as a warning, to build their own outcomes and avoid the shortcomings of King Geyserik and his destroyed empire. The final fight with Guts and Griffith is something confirmed to happen, so I expect a lot of build-up around the Beast of Darkness, around the God Hand's plan, and around Casca as a meaningful character again. The last act's purpose, I believe, is to somehow break this cyclical tendency, and to defy causality at just the right time, like, if you will, a fish breaching the surface of water. And that brings me to the end of my video. Thanks very much for watching. It's been a long time since I uploaded. I apologise for that. I'm at the end of university, but not anymore, because my country is exploding. If you enjoyed this one, give a like, subscribe for more, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.